Hi everybody, welcome back to LARP 101, and today we're going to talk about roleplay tips. Before we start, I'm coming to the end of this video series. So for my last episode, what I would like to do is do a Q&A session where I can answer all of your questions about LARP. So if you have a question you'd like to ask, please pop it in the comment section below, or you can send it to ouradventuringparty@gmail.com, which is in the description box below. Okay, on to the nitty-gritty. Roleplay. Now, I have a confession to make. I am a terrible role player. I'm easily embarrassed, I hate being the centre of attention, and I constantly worry about how other people perceive me. So, the fact is, if somebody who is as ill-suited as being a role player as me is going to LARP and having the time of their lives, then I'm sure you will be absolutely fine. I just use a few key things to help me be the best role player I can be, and these are some tips that I'm going to share with you right now. Things go wrong. It's almost impossible to be a good role player on your very first try. I mean, I've been doing this for years and I mess up often. I break character, I forget things that are going on. If I had to give myself a grade for my roleplay, I would probably give myself a C. And that may be generous. The important thing is that if you do make a mistake, try and bounce back from it as quickly as you possibly can. If you break character, take a moment to refocus and go back in. If you make a mistake, say sorry, if you need to, and carry on. If you're new to roleplay, there is often a temptation to be overly self-critical about your performance. If you aren't careful, there is a possibility that you'll go home after an event and go over every interaction you possibly had, thinking what you could have done better, how you could have performed better, how you could have portrayed your character in a better way. But LARP is there to be enjoyed, and if you carry your mistakes with you, then you're not going to get everything out of it that you want. Be kind to yourself. You're aiming to be a good role player for your enjoyment, not anyone else's. So, carrying on from my previous point, try and stay in character as much as you can. Staying in character is one of the key things that helps you get the most out of your roleplay. And dropping in and out of character will not only break immersion for yourself, but for other people as well. Come up with some strategies that help you get into character before you start an event, and also have a few strategies for what happens if you accidentally break character in the middle of an event. I like to have a few big rituals for myself before I go to any LARP event. My big ones often include creating playlists for my characters that I listened endlessly for weeks on end before the event goes, because I have no life. I tend to wear my character's jewellery in the week or so before the event leads up, and I have this whole big thing where on the morning of any LARP event I have a strict routine of shower, check my bags, and have this breakfast, which often involves whatever I've decided my character's favourite breakfast food would be. And I have some mini ones that help me get back into the character when I'm in the middle of play. Because let's face it, nobody appreciates it when you whip out a pair of headphones to restart your character's playlist in the middle of a battlefield. Doesn't go down well. I often use a countdown, just 3, 2, 1, and in. Or I do stupid things like spinning my sword in my hand, just sort of getting back into that mindset. Anything you choose to do that works for you is valid. Even if that means you have to step away, go out of character for a little bit, and cool off. It's all fine. You don't necessarily need to plan out what your minor strategies are, because they may just come naturally to you, but try and have something in mind just to help you get from, into character to out of character, and vice versa, to make your life just a little bit easier. So I've talked about this topic in my Staying Safe at LARP video. If you've not watched that already, I really recommend you do. There is a link in a little info box on, I can't remember which side of the screen it appears. Click on it and watch that video. Knowing your own boundaries at LARP doesn't just keep you safe, but it also helps you be a good role player. Because if you know your boundaries ahead of time, it becomes a lot easier to identify roleplay situations that are going to make you uncomfortable. Because you will be surprised how many times in a LARP you are put on the spot. You could be invited from anything from taking part in a performance piece to committing a murder, and possibly anything in between. So if you know where your lines are beforehand, it is a bit easier to avoid them. And remember, if somebody keeps pushing against your boundaries, it is perfectly within your right to drop out of character and say no. Just because it's roleplay doesn't mean that your consent is no longer important. This is a key one for me personally, because as a former forum role player, I see this coming a mile off, because forum role players sometimes do this when they get into LARP. Tabletoppers sometimes as well, but in my experience, nowhere near as often. Because forum roleplay is entirely descriptive, the limitations on what you can do are almost non-existent. So sometimes when people start LARPing, they take this mentality of forum roleplay into the game, in that they believe that if they describe the action they wish to achieve, even if they can't physically do it, that is somehow acceptable. And in some LARPs it is, and in some LARPs it's not. Being limited in this way can put people off LARP, but it doesn't have to. LARPs are often designed around a suspension of belief. After all, no one is actually expecting you to be able to shoot lightning from your fingers. So if there is something you want to be able to do, but can't, for any reason you have, contact the LARP organisers and talk about it. It's very possible that there are already mechanics in place there to help you. Because let's face it, event organisers want you to enjoy their game and they want you to get as much as you can out of your event. And if what you're asking for is not possible, they will tell you. The important thing is to just not presume. Don't ask, don't get. It is not always practical to assume that roleplay is going to come to you. If you sit in your camp for hours and barely talk to anyone, then odds are people are going to think that you don't want to roleplay with them. So get out there, start talking to people and start asking questions. Find out what's happening. Find out who the other characters are. Invest in their stories. Because ultimately, good roleplayers get involved. And let's face it, if you're like me and you're a bit of a rubbish roleplayer, the only way you're going to get better is if you keep interacting with people. There are roleplayers out there who believe that they can justify bad behaviour because that's what my character would do. But going out of the way to spoil other people's fun is, in my opinion, just bad form. Don't get in the way of other people's fun. It's one thing to go off and murder someone else's character because you developed a deep grudge against them. It's completely different if you're killing them off because you find them annoying. There are ways to play a villain without being a complete arsehole. If you're going to play a bad guy, such as a villain, or even just someone unpleasant like a, school bully, thief, street thug, then be prepared. Think about the other player. Would they be happy with how you're going to treat them? It may be that if you are planning to do this, it might be a good idea to discuss it with them out of character beforehand to check that they are going to be okay with how this is going to go down. That being said, if you're planning on killing someone else's character, then prepare some aftercare. Make sure that they are okay with what just happened to them. And if they're not, be prepared that you may need to talk it out with them. Make sure you are not carrying an out of character grudge into the game and letting it influence your decisions, because no one's going to come out of that feeling good. Not even you. Because it is a fact of life that thoughts and emotions do bleed through the barrier that exists between roleplay and real life, which is the subject of my next LARP video, which is going to be what is character bleed and how to deal with it. Bleed can affect you really strongly in both positive and negative ways, and it is really important to manage it effectively. So if you have not subscribed, please do so you can watch that video coming out in 2 weeks' time. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you're staying happy and healthy. I'll see you on a battlefield soon.